Hello guys, in this video we are going to discuss three very important topics. First one, rare earth elements and the permanent magnets. So India's strategic response to Chinese dominance. And then MGNREGA to VBGRAMG. That's a shift from rights to discretion. And the third one that we'll cover is new labor code and the systematic neglect of informal workers. So if you can understand, today's lecture, this is a very important area because it covers GS paper 2, GS paper 3, essay, multiple topics like governance, federalism, rights, economy, industrial policy, labor, strategic resources, development versus rights, growth versus welfare. So all these will be touched upon in these three areas. So let's begin. Let's start with the first one. That's the rare earth elements and the permanent magnets. Okay, so this is very important for your economy and security area. Why this topic matters? India in late 2025 have taken a major strategic decision regarding the permanent magnets. So this is not just an economic decision. It is about industrial sovereignty, energy transition, and a strategic dependence on China. So to understand this decision, what India have taken, we must have to first understand what rare earth elements really are. So what are the rare earth elements? So if you look at the periodic table, there is a separate row at the bottom which is called as lanthanides. So that includes 17 elements, which include neodymium, dysprosium, and then cerium, right? So they are called the vitamins of modern industry because they are, indispensable for electronic vehicle motors, wind turbines, and defense technologies, etc. And many people think lithium is the key resource for EV. That is incomplete. Lithium powers the battery, rare earth power the motor. So they are the gatekeepers of modern industry. Now, why they are called rare, right? So rare earth elements are not rare in availability. They are found abundantly in the earth crust, but the problem is they are not found in the concentrated form. They are mixed with other minerals, and separating them is technically difficult and extremely expensive also. So rare refers to economic and technological difficulty and not the geological scarcity. It's available, but the problem is getting in that concentrated form. It's expensive and it's technically difficult also. Now let's look at this green energy paradox. So there is a French journalist, Pitron, in his book The Rare Metal War. He raises a powerful question. So to save the planet, are we destroying the planet, right? Why? Because rare earth are essential for green technologies, but extracting them, that causes severe pollution. I told you it's not that easy. It's expensive and technologically difficult. So there is a deep irony. EVs reduce the emission, wind turbines promote renewable energy, but rare earth mining itself damages the environment. So you are damaging the environment, and on the other side you are trying to promote EVs and everything, right? So that paradox must have to be acknowledged in a mature UPSC answer. So you should be knowing this, and that's the reason why I've explained this part, right? So this on one side, to get that rare earth, you're doing a lot of things and you're polluting. Now, why you are getting rare earth? For this wind energy, for this EVs and everything, just to reduce the emissions and the pollution. So the core technical insight here is the real focus. It's not about the rare earth elements, but the magnets. See, there's a most important analytical point. If you look at the editorial that I'm referring, that 26th of December. So the real strategic focus is not rare earth elements themselves, but the permanent magnet made from them. Now you consider the wind turbines that rotate due to magnetism, and EV motors function because of the magnetic force again. So traditional magnets were weak, and modern technology used neodymium, iron boron, NdFeB, that magnets, right? So the advantage is very small in size and extremely powerful, and drastically improve the efficiency of motors. Now, without these magnets, EV revolution will collapse. So renewable energy slows down also. So that's very important. Now, why China dominate here? Firstly, China control 80 to 90% of global refining and processing of rare earth. Now, mining exists in USA, Australia, and other countries, but the power lies in where processing, not in mining. So if I want to give an analogy, oil may be extracted in Saudi Arabia, but if petrol refineries exist only in one country, that country control the energy, right? So China started investing in this sector since Deng Xiaoping era, 1990s onwards, and that's why the saying exists: the Middle East has oil, China has rare earth. So that's the reason why China is actually dominating, because the actual power lies not in mining, it lies in the processing part to extract that. Now, what is India's strategic response? This is very important. India finally realized mining alone is meaningless. Value addition is the real power. So the government launched a 7,280 crore scheme with a clear target. That's 6,000 tons per year of sintered rare earth permanent magnets. And if successful, dependence on China will reduce, and Indian EV manufacturers like Tata, Mahindra, they'll benefit, and a full domestic ecosystem will develop also. But there are three major challenges which are identified. The first challenge is monazite-thorium nuclear link. In India, rare earth are found mainly in the beach sands of Kerala, Tamil Nadu, Odisha. And these are called monazite sands, right? But the problem is monazite contain thorium. So thorium is an atomic mineral. Therefore, mining is not open market. It is regulated by Department of Atomic Energy, Indian Rare Earth Limited also, IREL. So mining generate the radioactive waste, and that will create risk for local communities also. And this is the ultimate green energy dilemma. Can clean energy be produced without radioactive danger? That's the dilemma actually. So that's again a question, right? Second, the lab to land gap. See, India have National Critical Mineral Mission, the projects assigned to Geological Survey of India till 2031. But the problem is, discovery is easy. I told you before itself, the processing technology is the bottleneck. And what India lacks, the scalable separation technology, the industrial processing plants, we don't have. So what is required here is regulatory clarity for private players, and then government investment in processing facilities, and the credible enforcement against the illegal mining also. Now, the third challenge, that's the market assurance. Even if India builds magnet factories, China sells magnet cheaper, and it can still sell magnet cheaper, right? Because we are just starting, so it will be expensive for us. For them, from 1990s it started, and they are the champions, so they can sell cheaper. So what is the solution in that context? You need assured procurement agreements. EV companies like Tata, Ola, they should commit to Indian magnets. So that will basically ensure, bankable projects, easier loans, and the faster scaling. So the way forward in this case, the future belongs to the country that can scale permanent magnets without destroying the environment, without creating new risk. And most importantly, do not put all eggs in Chinese basket. So these are the things that I want to discuss about the first topic. Now coming to MGNREGA to VBGRAMG, right? Rights, federalism, welfare, all these coming into picture here. So let's start with the background here. So 2005, MGNREGA, NREGA, National Rural Employment Guarantee Act enacted. 2009, it is renamed as MGNREGA, Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee Program. Now, the core principle is demand-driven employment. Every rural citizen had a legal right to 100 days of work per year, and there will be compensation if work was not provided. So again, this was not charity, this was a justiciable right also. Okay, now what is the new one is all about? Vikshit Bharat Guarantee for Rozgar and Ajivika Mission. So the key shift is, when it comes to MGNREGA, it's rights based. Now, when it comes to VBGRAMG, that is supply driven. Now, the center decide the allocations, and demand is no longer decisive, and authority is getting centralized. What is the ideological shift here? See, again, this is not a cosmetic name change alone. It is an ideological rupture. So you are removing Gandhi's name, that is symbolic. Gandhi, in fact, stood for justice for the poorest. Vikshit Bharat reframes welfare as, development discretion. So the economist Jean Rees basically argue that this is not a reform. It is the end of the right to work. Earlier, you had the assurance of 100 days of work. You had a right to work, right? So now it's not a reform. It's the end of right to work. Now, also let's look at fiscal federalism trap. See here the funding pattern of change. Earlier it was 90-10, center 90 contribute, state 10. Now it's 60-40. So what is the impact? The poorer states like Bihar, Odisha, they cannot afford the 40%. So what the state will do, state will eventually try to suppress the demand. So the projects will reduce automatically. So that is how a legal right is dismantled indirectly. So that's why this criticism is all about. Again, if we look at the historical context, there was a slogan in 2004, India shining. So the reality is jobless growth, agrarian distress, etc. Even at that point of time. And what UPA did, UPA responded with rights-based architecture, RTI. And that's in fact the reason why, UPA 2 came in 2009. So RTI, Forest Rights Act, and MGNREGA, these laws were not anti-growth. They have ensured the inclusive growth. Now let's also look at rights versus beneficiaries. When it comes to MGNREGA, citizens were right holders. When it comes to the new one, VBGRAMG, citizens become beneficiaries. So rights, when I say, that's something which is claimed. Now, when we talk about beneficiary, benefits are accepted with gratitude. So there is no claim over it. You are getting it, you accept it, you have the gratitude. Rights are something which is claimed. So you can claim your employment, right? Now that's not the case. So that shift actually weakens the accountability and the dignity of the worker also. Now coming to the democratic process concerns. See, MGNREGA was passed with consensus. This one, VBGRAMG was rushed, opposition walkout and no standing committee scrutiny, nothing. Even protests were also denied. Jantar Mantar permission have refused, and 20-year law that just ended in 2 days, right? So the protest, requires 10-day notice, something like that was the reason. Now, my conclusion is, see, if you look at COVID-19, during COVID-19, MGNREGA supported crores of people. Now, when you're replacing, that means it's firstly erosion of rights, and that will weaken the fiscal federalism, and it's a dilution of democratic foundation rules. Okay, so the third one that we need to discuss, that's related to the new labor codes and the informal workers. Important for your GS3, essay, labor, social justice areas, etc. So if you look at the reality of Indian labor, 90% of workforce is informal. And these informal sector contribute 65% to GDP. Still, the reforms focus largely on the formal or the organized sector. Now, if you look at the labor code overview, earlier there were 44 central labor laws. Now, all these merged into 4 codes. One, code on wages, then industrial relations code and social security code and OSHWC code. So what the government claim was, you're consolidating everything and ease of doing business, and it's a win-win outcome. So there is everything coming together, right? Now, here there is a missing of tripartite consultation. Labor is in the concurrent list, and reforms require what? Tripartite consultation. That means the government, employers, and workers through Indian Labor Conference. And this consultation so far did not occur. So that is something which is there. Again, informal workers ignored. See, only the Social Security Code, briefly mentioned them. So completely the informal workers have ignored except the Social Security Code. Other codes, largely exclude the construction workers and agricultural laborers and the salt workers, like that. So informal workers have ignored in this. And again, if you look at, the earlier protection, BOCW Act was there, right? And then 180 safety rules was there. Now, when it comes to new OCHWC, that omits many safety provisions which were there earlier. Again, when it comes to inspection, the inspection dilution aspect. Earlier, the physical inspections by labor inspectors. Now it is web-based inspection. So that will basically violate ILO Convention 81, the physical inspection, and which was actually ratified by India. So that is physical inspection. This one is basically talking about web-based inspection. Again, occupational health is ignored, right? For example, silicosis when it comes to construction, cancer risk, agriculture. kidney skin diseases for the salt workers. So new code is basically ignoring these realities. And that's again a violation of ILO convention, which we have ratified, ILO convention 161, that is the occupational health for all. Then there is an issue with the welfare funding crisis also. Earlier, the welfare funded through cesses. Now, post GST, many cesses have removed, so no alternative funding clarity. So that welfare funding crisis is also there. Then there are concerns with the eShram portal. See, the workers' data centralized, right? So the construction welfare fund, that's 1 lakh crore. So the fear is the center controls the fund and state welfare boards are actually getting weakened also here. Now we are also have to look at the Tamil Nadu model versus centralization. In Tamil Nadu, 39 sector specific welfare boards are there. For example, pension for a separate board is there, maternity separate board is there, education benefits separate board is there. So 39 sector specific welfare boards are there. Now new code is proposing one board, so that there is a risk of collapsing the successful state model also if this comes together. So Tamil Nadu, it's a successful state model. So there is a possible risk of collapsing that model. Now, what can be the future? What is the way forward? See, state like Tamil Nadu and Kerala, they must resist dilution and restore the safety rules and reinstate the physical inspection and then revive the tripartite dialogue. So these are the way forward. Now, see, Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said, labor is not a commodity. Labor has dignity. It cannot be treated as a disposable input. So, guys, these are the things that I want to discuss. We have discussed something which is related to the strategic resource, the centralized control, and the welfare aspect, discretion replacing the rights, and then the labor, efficiency overriding dignity. So, don't just memorize. I want you to have a structural understanding. And that's the reason why I went like this, have discussed multiple areas quickly, right? So that's about the session. Thank you so much. If you're looking for any mentorship or classes, get in touch with us. See you there.